Oh, you still look as poor as ever. I'm marrying the chairman's son of S Corporation. I could invite you to the wedding as an old classmate. But please, don't wear that shabby suit. It's embarrassing. My ex, Lisa, whom I met again after 10 years at a class reunion, said this to me in a condescending tone. I was taken aback by how my ex still seemed to be only interested in money and status. At that moment, my best friend's girlfriend angrily interrupted. Do you even know how much he makes a year? $5 million. What? No way. Stop telling embarrassing lies. If that's true, then why is he wearing such a cheap suit? I calmly explained the situation to Lisa. She ended up feeling deeply embarrassed. I'm Kevin. 28 years old. I live alone in the suburbs of New York. I live in my family home, but my parents have moved to Southeast Asia, so they're not around. The house is quite large for just me. There are many rooms and the yard is excessively big. It used to be a small construction company and residence, so the lot is enormous. There was even a small dormitory for live-in workers in the yard. The yard, which can easily accommodate trucks and heavy machinery, used to look like a playground. But now, there are no employees or heavy machinery. All that's left is my small car. The empty house is often quiet, with only the sounds of birds and insects, making it quite lonely. Today, I'm wearing work overalls and weeding the yard. Because of the heavy rain yesterday, the ground is muddy, and I'm covered in dirt. But if I don't keep up with the maintenance, the yard will become unusable. Since there's no one else, I have to do it myself. Ouch. After bending over for so long, my back started to hurt. When I stood up and stretched, I saw the overcast early summer sky. There were no breaks in the clouds, making it a gloomy day. Days like this can be pretty depressing. Today, when I took out my work clothes from the dresser, I was reminded of my ex-girlfriend from my student days. She would never wear work clothes and would probably say they looked tacky. Lisa was, to put it simply, a woman who loved money. She started dating me because my parents owned a company. When we were first-year high school students and in the same class for only 3 days, she confessed to me. Kevin, I'm Lisa. Your family owns K Construction, right? You're the future president. I love rich guys. Please go out with me. It was a bold confession. She said it in the classroom, in front of all our classmates. Everyone, including myself, was frozen, not quite understanding what she had just said. It was so straightforward that it didn't sink in immediately. But I quickly burst out laughing and responded to Lisa. Ha ha. Sure, let's go out, Lisa. Lisa was incredibly cute. She was exactly my type. Cute and straightforward seemed like a great combination to me. Even now, I haven't changed much, but back in high school, I was really simple-minded. My family was well off, school was fun, and I had no worries, so I was relaxed. When we started dating, Lisa always had somewhat excessive requests, but I had no trouble fulfilling them and bought her whatever she wanted. I even liked her shopping habits. Eventually, we became a well-known couple at school. Sometimes, my friends would say, Kevin, how many bags have you bought for Lisa? How many bags does a girl need to be satisfied? They get bored so quickly. I'd save the money instead. Isn't it a waste? But I always thought Lisa was right. Money is meant to be spent, not saved. Since I didn't have much to spend on myself, I enjoyed seeing her delighted face when she spent money freely. However, when the money ran out, I realized that happiness came from having the luxury to spend. When I was a senior in high school, my father's company faced a significant downturn. At that moment, Lisa quickly broke up with me. I can't be with someone who has no money or future. Even love dries up under those conditions. You understand, right? Goodbye, Kevin. I knew the economy had been gradually worsening, but K Construction handled not only general construction but also civil engineering projects. Civil engineering involves infrastructure projects like roads, bridges, and tunnels, rather than buildings and apartments handled by general construction. These infrastructure projects are usually commissioned by the government or municipalities. So, I thought we were safe. However, my father was outmaneuvered by a rival company and lost a crucial contract. My parents, disliking conflict, gave up on recovering the project or suing the almost fraudulent rival company. Unable to fire any employees, they kept paying everyone while taking on small projects, even as the business went into the red. This couldn't last long, and when the competent employees sensed the company's danger, they left one by one. By the time I graduated high school, only the trainees from Southeast Asia remained. Seeing my parents struggling to keep the company going, I decided not to go to the private university I could have easily advanced to. I planned to help out at home, find something I wanted to study, and take the National University entrance exam next year. At the graduation ceremony, Lisa was quite spiteful. How pitiful. Everyone else is moving up to the university, but you're stuck with just a high school diploma because you have no money. It's so uncool. I don't want anyone to think you were my ex. I was sadder than I expected when Lisa and I broke up, but by graduation, I was calm. She was already dating another rich guy, and I realized we lived in different worlds now. I liked spending money and I liked her. But she didn't need me, she only liked the money. That's fundamentally wrong. I looked away from the cloudy sky and surveyed the barren, expansive yard. If Lisa saw this lifeless yard, she'd definitely say, "How pitiful." And she'd probably call my muddy overalls uncool too. Enough. Thinking about a girl who doesn't understand the basics of life just brings me down. I went back to the weeding. 3 days later, after finishing the weeding in the yard, I got a call from a high school classmate at night. Sean was the guy who used to tell me to save money instead of buying bags. He went on to college, but he still kept in touch occasionally, inviting me out to unwind. Since my breakup with Lisa, he has introduced me to several women. None of them liked me, so my streak of being single continued. He now worked at a major company in the city, enjoying both work and love life. From what he said, other classmates were also working at good companies. "Kevin, are you free tonight? There's a girl I think you'd like. She's 2 years older than us, but don't worry about that. Let's grab a drink near the station. Come on out." I showered, changed into my casual clothes, and biked to the station. As soon as I entered our usual cheap, old bar, he called out to me. "Hey, Kevin, over here. How about a draft beer to start?" Next to Sean was a glamorous beauty. While Sean was ordering, the beauty gave me a slight nod, and I nodded back. "Man, Sean. He always brings these glamorous women here, which can be a bit troublesome." All the women Sean had introduced me to before were sophisticated and stylish, like the beauty before me. They would smile in this rundown bar but often seemed eager to leave, barely touching their drinks or food. "Okay, drinks are here. Let me introduce you. This is Kevin, my high school buddy. And this is Hannah." I met her at a bar, and we hit it off. Hannah smiled, holding a mug of draft beer like us. She was a classic beauty, and it was easy to see why Sean approached her at the bar. We toasted and began a somewhat confusing drinking session. To my surprise, Hannah downed a large mug of beer in one go and immediately ordered, "Next, a bottle of wine, please." Her drinking style was unexpected given her appearance. "Kevin, isn't Hannah interesting? She looks so delicate, but she's quite the drinker," Sean said. Hannah, smiling even more broadly, then asked me, "Kevin, did I scare you off?" I gave her my honest opinion. "Not at all. You look like you really enjoyed your beer. You must like drinking." Hannah, looking pleased, ordered a glass for me and poured me some wine. I'm not much of a drinker, and mixing drinks gives me a headache later, but I thought, why not, and toasted with Hannah. Hannah enjoyed not just the alcohol but also happily ate all the appetizers. I realized that Hannah was different from the other women Sean had brought here before. Sean always chose this cheap, shabby bar for our meetings because it was affordable, and the place was usually devoid of women. The wine was cheap, and the snacks were old-fashioned, like monkfish liver and whale bacon. Most typical women prefer more stylish places and trendy food and drinks. They subtly hint at changing venues, and that's usually when we part ways. But Hannah was having fun, moving from wine to hot sake, to a hoppy, and now to a red-eye punch. I quietly asked Sean, "Where did you meet such an unusual girl, and how did this happen?" "At a bar in downtown Manhattan." That night, after drinking a lot, we went to a ramen shop, then to another bar. And she was in good spirits until morning. It never turned into a typical adult evening. I thought she might suit you. If she doesn't mind this bar, you two might get along. I thought Sean had a point. After all, I couldn't take her to expensive places. I no longer lived the life of freely spending money on women like I used to. However, whether Hannah and I would get along was another matter. She was beautiful and unpretentious, which was great. But she also frequented bars in downtown Manhattan. Our lifestyles might be fundamentally different. Kevin. Hannah suddenly spoke to me. She seemed very happy but not drunk. What's up, Hannah? Want to order something else? The fried chicken here is good. It's a bit greasy, but it tastes great. If you don't mind the calories, you should try it. Hannah laughed even more cheerfully after hearing my response. Then please order the fried chicken. So, to get straight to the point, Kevin, would you go out with me? Sean has told me about your past. It seems I was destined to be suddenly confessed to by women. But I don't think I can afford to take you to bars in downtown Manhattan anytime soon. When I gave that disappointing response, Hannah laughed again and said, If I pay, will you go with me? I have plenty of money to spend. What I lack is someone like you, Kevin, who is kind and seems to share my values. I have good intuition. I think we'd get along well. If she knew everything about me from Sean and still wanted to date me, I had no reason to refuse. Hannah was beautiful and down to earth. It was actually an honor. We ended up dating that very night, going from the bar to a ramen shop and finally drinking until morning at my house. Even though we had just met, we hit it off exceptionally well. After that, Hannah often came to my suburban house, helping me clean up the yard or the abandoned dormitory. At night, we'd drink and talk about our future. Hannah's grandfather was the chairman of a major corporation, and her parents were the president. The company made massive profits and was still growing. But Hannah didn't agree with the company's management policies. Employees work so hard they're damaging their health, and so do the subcontractors. A company shouldn't exist to exploit people's hardships. It should exist to make someone happy. But when I kept saying that, my grandfather kicked me out. Even though she was the eldest daughter, she left home and started her own beauty-related company independently. Her personality of wanting to help people rather than just making money was very similar to mine. Sometimes, we would hang out with Sean's girlfriend, Amy, as a group of 4. Amy had joined the university where most of our high school graduates continued their education. Like Hannah, Amy was a strong woman who could clearly express her opinions. After graduation, she went to grad school and now works in a lab researching incurable diseases. By the way, at the bar, she enjoys eating the somewhat smelly goat soup with great relish. 3 months passed like that. I was in my home office, mulling over things and organizing documents. My parents, who were in Southeast Asia, officially handed over the company to me. Despite everything, the company hadn't gone bankrupt yet. All the heavy machinery and trucks were over there, and for the past few years, my parents had been running the business on a smaller scale in Southeast Asia. While I was preparing for college entrance exams, my parents, who were troubled by the business in New York, decided to take a cheap trip to Thailand for a change of pace. They found a good opportunity there. Since we had no contracts in New York at the time, they decided to move to Thailand and start working there. Apparently, Thailand has a better climate than New York, and the Thai people are very kind, making it a comfortable place to live. The scale of the work they could take on was smaller, but the cost of living was also lower, so it was more relaxed. I visited them a few times, and it seemed like a good fit for my peace-loving parents. Recently, they decided they wanted to fully retire and live a quiet life. So, they talked about passing the company on to me. Since I was dating Hannah, I told them I couldn't take over the company in Thailand. They then said they would close the company. But I argued that it would be a waste to shut down a company that had come this far, especially since we still had the property I was managing. As a result, we agreed that I would take over and try to restart the business at home. The business had once withdrawn from New York, so I had to start from scratch and recruiting employees. Still, I decided to give it a try. During this busy time, I received an invitation to a reunion. It was a notice for a high school class reunion. I had never attended one before. I felt a bit out of place since I didn't go to college with everyone else. And since I always heard about everyone from Sean, I felt no need to attend. But now, since I plan to restart the business here, I thought local connections might be necessary. For the first time, I checked attend and mailed the reply card. The reunion venue was the banquet room of a large hotel in the town center. It's a luxurious hotel often used for wedding receptions and big-name concerts. I wore the one suit I owned, which I had bought from a discount store. I hadn't worn it in a while, and it was a bit baggy. The sleeves and length were somewhat off, giving the impression that the suit was wearing me, but I thought it would be fine. When I entered the venue, it was more upscale than I expected, and everyone was dressed up. Since it had been 10 years since I had seen anyone besides Sean, I couldn't bring myself to talk to those whose faces I vaguely remembered. From them, too, I sensed a kind of hesitation. When I finally joined Sean, Amy was there too. I came along because Sean said it would be fine since I know many people here. "Oh, Amy, you graduated from a similar university, so you should be fine. It's a reunion, after all." When I said this to Amy, she replied, "You should have brought Hannah." "I can call her now if you want." I declined, thinking it would be inappropriate to bring Hannah. Our classmates around Sean noticed me and started talking. "Oh, Kevin, right? It's been ages. You were the only one who didn't go to college. What have you been up to?" I answered each question with a vague well, or so-so. I didn't want to go into too much detail, and I figured my story would take too long. Then, I heard a shrill voice. "Oh, everyone, long time no see." It was Lisa. I hadn't anticipated that she would be here at all. It was a reunion, so of course she would be here, but in my mind, she was already a person from my past. Even so, now that we'd met, I should at least greet her and make some small talk. "Lisa, Kevin is here too." "What? Kevin is here? No way." Lisa noticed me and exclaimed dramatically. I tried to greet her normally. "Long time no see. How have you been?" I realized I knew nothing about Lisa's past 10 years. Sean had never mentioned anything about her either. What should I do? Then she continued the conversation. But her attitude was extremely condescending. "Oh my, you still look as poor as ever. That ill-fitting suit looks terrible. I'm getting married next year to the chairman's son of S Corporation. I might invite you to the wedding as a classmate, but please don't wear that suit. It's embarrassing." I thought to myself how she still loved money just as much. While I was dumbfounded, everyone else started gathering around Lisa with admiration. Marrying the heir to S Corporation. That's incredible, the biggest catch in our school's history. S Corporation is the top trading company in New York now, right? Amazing. I want to be invited to the wedding too. Maybe it could lead to some business connections. Invite me. Pushed to the edge of the circle surrounding Lisa, Amy approached me. "Hey, what is with that woman? Isn't she being incredibly rude to you?" I waved my hand dismissively and explained. "She's my ex. But we all know she's always been like that, so it's no surprise." "Thanks for worrying about me." Amy was still upset, muttering how rude and "that's just unacceptable," while Sean tried to calm her down. The reunion continued to revolve around Lisa. There were video messages from our former teachers, slideshows of old photos, and class trivia competitions, but in everything, Lisa was the center of attention, gradually becoming the de facto representative of our grade. She had always stood out, and this must have been very satisfying for her. However, I just wanted to quietly enjoy the event and the food from the sidelines, but she kept bringing me up, which was annoying. For example, when I was dating Kevin, "Everyone, please forget it. It's embarrassing, so keep it a secret from my husband at the wedding," she said, trying to erase my presence from the photos. Or she'd say, "This bag I had on the school trip was a gift from Kevin. It's such a tacky brand, I hate it now. I wouldn't carry it today." Implying that I had forced the bag on her. I was resigned to it, but Amy, standing next to Sean, kept getting angry for me. "Why did you ever date someone like her, Kevin? It's embarrassing for you." Amy's kindness was enough to console me. Eventually, the organizers announced the next activity. It was to reveal rankings from our old class journals and compare them to our current statuses. For example, they'd reveal the ranking for most likely to become a celebrity, and find out that the top person is now a housewife. In the first category of this activity, an incident occurred. The host, hired from outside, announced, "Let's start with the rankings from freshman year. Each top person will give a comment. First, the ranking for most likely to become a CEO. Third place, James. Second place, Mike. And in first place, Kevin." The spotlight turned to me, and the host enthusiastically tried to hype up the crowd. "Oh, here he is, Kevin. So, are you a CEO now?" What was supposed to be a highlight turned into an incredibly awkward moment. My family was indeed wealthy when I was a freshman, wealthy enough for Lisa to confess to me. But now, everyone except the host knew that wasn't the case anymore. Bathed in the blinding light, with everyone silent, time seemed to drag on. I had no choice but to follow the rules and answer. "I am a CEO now." "Oh wow. That's amazing." Everyone's predictions were spot on. Contrary to the host's high energy, the mood in the room plummeted. At that moment, something happened. Lisa climbed onto the stage where the host stood. Grabbing the microphone from the host, she shouted, "Kevin is a liar. Everyone, there's a filthy liar among us," with the microphone echoing loudly. I and everyone else were stunned. How could she suddenly call me a liar? The host, holding another microphone, suddenly ran over to me. He probably thought it was part of the act. The host held the microphone to my mouth. Lisa stood above us, looking down, waiting for my rebuttal. "I recently officially took over my parents' company, so..." Before I could finish, Lisa's shrill voice interrupted again. "Stop lying. Follow the rules. Everyone, I checked the data from my fiancé's business. Kevin's family company has no business records. Well, that's because the business was conducted in Thailand. Also, isn't it illegal to look at her fiancé's company's secrets? So, everyone, who do you believe? Me or this show-off liar Kevin? Why on earth was Lisa so hostile towards me? What did I ever do to her? Even when we were dating, I let her have her way when we broke up. He ruined my precious youth, and now, after 10 years, he came to ruin this important reunion. Right? Unforgivable, isn't it, everyone? A poor guy lying out of jealousy to ruin my wedding. I see. Lisa had gone through a lot of trouble and stress to secure her advantageous marriage. Her nerves were on edge, and my unexpected presence triggered her. Marrying someone of her status would give her more peace of mind and happiness, but she chose this stressful path. The host seemed to realize this wasn't part of the act. She was sweating profusely while holding the microphone to my mouth. I was about to ask them to turn off the spotlight because it was too hot. However, Amy took the microphone next. "Hello, I'm Amy. I mostly associated with the science majors in college. I didn't know you, Lisa, but this is too much. Kevin is indeed a CEO." Lisa, on the stage, looked incredulous. Amy continued without pause. "Lisa, do you know his income? He makes $5 million a year." "What? No way." The spotlight went off, and the general lighting returned. While everyone had been watching Lisa earlier, now they were all looking at me. What Amy said was true. After the foreign trainees were the only ones left at my parents' company, I had created a translation device to help them. Given my ample free time. Initially, it was a large device that only worked for their language in English. But I then went to a national university's engineering department, studied more, and by graduation, I had developed an earbud-sized device supporting multiple languages. When my parents decided to stay in Thailand, it was under the condition that my invention was available. Now, it's an app used on various smartphones. Thankfully, this invention provided me with a high income. Everyone has used the simultaneous translation app, right? Kevin invented it. He also took over his parents' company and is its CEO. So, he's not lying. With Amy's explanation, everyone started buzzing, saying, "I use it, and it's essential for my job." Lisa looked flustered on stage. However, she didn't stop talking. That's a lie. If that's true, then why are you wearing such a cheap suit? I took the microphone from Amy and began explaining. I donate all my income, except for the bare minimum I need to live. Money is meant to be spent. Since I don't have anything I want to spend it on, I give it all to organizations that need it. I used to spend money on you, Lisa. If that ruined your youth, I'm sorry. But I only bought what you asked for. Applause started somewhere in the room and soon spread throughout. Lisa stood there, her face red with embarrassment. I felt a bit sorry for her, but I needed to clear my name to avoid future business problems in the community, so I didn't extend a hand to help her. When the applause died down and the classical music resumed, everyone waited for her to say something. I saw someone approaching Lisa, who stood on the stage with an angry and troubled expression. It was the host. Being a professional, I thought he might be able to change the tense atmosphere. But then, I saw another person, a woman, following him onto the stage. It was Hannah. I looked at Sean in surprise, and he explained apologetically, Amy called her. She arrived a moment ago, saw the commotion, and asked the host if she could speak. Hannah was handed the microphone by the host and began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Hannah. I'm Kevin's wife. What? Lisa's voice, holding the microphone with both hands, echoed throughout the hall. Hannah and I had gotten married last month. We quickly realized we were perfect for each other. We held a small, simple ceremony with just our families. When I met her family, they were all kind and refined people. Although Hannah had differences in business philosophy with her family, she managed well as part of the family. We received blessings from both sides. Lisa, you are my husband's ex. And currently, you are engaged to my brother. Huh? You're my sister-in-law? Everyone was riveted by the exchange between Lisa and Hannah. My grandfather is the founder of S Corporation. My brother, Noah, will likely become the next president. Though I am the eldest daughter, I have completely stepped away from the business. Therefore, it's up to my brother to choose his partner who will support him in business. So, you came here personally to give your blessing? Lisa's previously defeated demeanor shifted to one of arrogance as she looked dreamily at Hannah. But Hannah remained expressionless, like a mask. I cannot acknowledge you as my brother's partner, Lisa. If the business fails, would you publicly harm my brother as you are doing to Kevin now? That would never happen. So, if that happens, what will you do for my brother? Have you studied psychology? Business management? It doesn't seem like you've learned how to build relationships either. Lisa couldn't respond and wore a bitter expression. Lisa? And you know what? Even if you marry my brother, he doesn't have money to spend on your luxuries. His money is the company's money. Do you have any means to earn your own income? At this, Lisa's face contorted with rage as she screamed. What? What's the point of being rich if he can't spend it? That's ridiculous. Then all my efforts to outshine rivals and struggles have been for nothing. Hannah looked at Lisa sadly and continued. Then I will inform my family that the engagement is off. Everyone, I apologize for using this venue for personal matters. Please continue to support Kevin. With that, Hannah stepped off the stage. For the second time that day, the room erupted in applause, enveloping the sight of Lisa sitting in shock and the speechless host. A year later, I was at a luxurious hotel banquet hall in the city. Today was Noah's wedding reception. His bride was not Lisa but a woman who was a junior of Amy's in the economics department. After graduating in economics and studying psychology, she chose to support Noah in his work, abandoning her career. Incidentally, she enjoyed eating boiled pig's feet with her bare hands at that old, shabby bar. Invited as family, Hannah and I, along with Sean and Amy, who were invited as friends, shared the happiness of the day with smiles. According to Sean, after her engagement was called off, Lisa set her sights on elite office workers instead of business owners and continued her matchmaking efforts. She was nothing if not resilient. In terms of single-mindedly pursuing her desires, she was the strongest. The food served at the reception was a super high-end French course. It was very delicious. Not just because of the quality of the food, but because I was eating with people who shared my values. It's okay not to enjoy a rundown bar. I hoped Lisa would eventually realize the value of just being together and the atmosphere, not just the price. But I also knew that wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'm too busy being happy for myself. I never intended to help anyone. It wasn't a reflex either. It was just a careless act of helping someone by accident. This incident had a significant impact on my life. Unbeknownst to me, those around me started creating a version of me that wasn't really me. I had no choice but to accept this strange situation. I was expected to live not the life I wanted, but the life others wanted for me. At first, it was painful. One day, I was surprised to realize I no longer felt anything. That incident. When I rushed into the house that was about to be engulfed in flames, it wasn't out of a desire to help or a reflex. I merely entrusted my life to the whims of whatever God was out there. As a result, I survived and am still alive today. Whether it was the act of a god or not is questionable, but a mark was left on my body, as if to remind me that my life was spared. It's been 10 years since then. Labeled a good person, I was obligated to live up to that image. The real me doesn't exist, it's the good person version of me walking through life. I took a job at a local advertising agency because I didn't want to leave my grandmother who raised me alone. My parents divorced when I was young, and each of them has built happy families since then. In other words, I was a discarded child. During the divorce, there was a huge argument because neither parent wanted to take me. They both had new partners, after all. A child would be a burden in a divorce. I was raised by my grandparents. I don't think I was a problematic child, misbehaving or being a shut-in. My grandparents who raised me with love have passed away. In the spring, when there was no longer a reason for me to stay in my hometown, a transfer order suddenly came my way. It was a transfer to the head office's sales department. Seeing this as an opportunity, I quickly sold the house and land I inherited from my grandparents and prepared to start a new life in a new place. But all that effort was wasted on the first day. David is a person full of integrity and courage, who once saved a girl's life by rushing into a burning house when he was in high school. Tom, the manager, introduced me this way during the morning assembly on my first day after the transfer, and my world went dark. I wanted a fresh start. I was serious about it. But my new colleagues looked at me the same way people in my hometown did. In that moment of despair, it was clear that even here, I couldn't be my true self. That personal story doesn't matter. A cold, exasperated voice said. I instinctively looked to see who spoke. There stood a woman with long, loosely curled hair, sharply dressed in a suit. She looked like a career woman and seemed unapproachable. But she was incredibly beautiful. I could believe it if someone said she was an actress. Her makeup was flawless, and her posture was perfectly straight. She exuded confidence. David, this is our chief, Anna. She will be your direct supervisor. Tom addressed me, seemingly ignoring her words. It looked like she would be my mentor as well. I'm David. Nice to meet you. I greeted her. She looked me up and down, as if appraising me. I got a slightly unpleasant feeling. I'm Anna. Prove your worth to me by working hard, she said, completely dismissing my attempt to reach out. I sighed deeply inside. My new life seemed full of challenges, and I worried if I could make it. I couldn't imagine myself working well with this beautiful but stern boss. The only saving grace was the kindness of my colleagues. They quickly accepted me, the newcomer, and taught me the ropes, despite my lack of sales experience. Thanks to their help, I managed to fit into the new workplace by the end of the first month. Every day, I faced reprimands and harsh words from Anna. Initially, her words made me upset and depressed, but upon reflection, I realized she wasn't wrong. After that realization, I could accept her harsh words more sincerely. As a result, my sales performance began to improve rapidly. Now, I am grateful to her. It looks like you've finally grown into a decent employee. Let's have the welcome party we've postponed, Anna said to me around 2 months after my transfer to the head office. The welcome party was supposed to be held when I first transferred. The one who put a stop to it was, of course, Anna. She directly appealed to Tom, insisting that I needed to learn the job first before having a welcome party. I also asked him, please prioritize work, next to Anna. The fact that a welcome party was being planned meant I had met Anna's standards. I was more pleased about that than the actual party and couldn't help but grin. Thank you. You're still just halfway there. Anna gave a wry smile in response to my loud expression of gratitude. It was the first time I saw her smile. Even if it was just a wry smile. Even so, she looked incredibly attractive. The welcome party was held at a small Spanish restaurant that we had rented out. It had a small courtyard with tables, creating an open and inviting atmosphere. My colleagues seemed to be in high spirits in this relaxed setting. After the initial greetings and a toast, everyone started eating and drinking freely. This kind of party was a new experience for me. It felt very urban, making me feel a bit out of place as someone from the countryside. As I reacted appropriately to the conversations of my teammates, I thought about this. It made me realize that I still hadn't quite adjusted to this city. I sighed quietly, trying not to draw attention, and looked around the venue for a quiet spot to drink. In the courtyard, I noticed Anna sitting alone on a bench, sipping her drink. I discreetly slipped away from my colleagues, grabbed a few pinchos on a plate, and approached her. Anna, may I sit here? I asked softly. She looked up from her drink and glared at me. Her eyes were slightly red, which was surprisingly alluring. She seemed tipsy, but her gaze was steady. I might have chosen a bad time to approach her. A cold sweat ran down my back. Sure, she said, slightly slurring her words, and scooted over to make space for me. Having come this far, there was no way I could say, never mind, so I cautiously sat down on the bench. I caught a glimpse of Anna's profile, and it wasn't her usual stern boss look, she just looked like a regular drunk. A really beautiful drunk, at that. Here, have some. When I offered the plate of pinchos, Anna's eyes lit up with delight. The contrast with her workplace demeanor left me speechless. You are thoughtful. Thanks. She happily munched on a pincho, clearly in high spirits. She swung her legs like a child, causing her elegant high heels to dangle precariously from her toes. You seem in a good mood. I just love good food and good drinks. She reached for a second pincho as she spoke. It was clear she had been drinking quite a bit. Right after the toast, she had been her usual self. Perhaps she wasn't very good with alcohol. Hey, tell me about your heroic story. Tom mentioned it on your first day, she said with drowsy eyes. I sighed softly. It's not a story to tell to a drunk person. But with Anna looking up at me with eager eyes, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. It's not much of a story. I prefaced my tale before starting to talk. It happened when I was 17. It's a day I don't like to remember, as it was the worst day of my life. After my parents divorced, I was raised by my grandparents. I foolishly believed that one day either my father or mother would come back for me. My grandparents didn't talk much about my parents, which only fueled my faint hope. If they had bluntly told me, you're an unwanted child, it might have hurt less. By the time I was in high school, I had various ways to search for my parents. I secretly looked for them, believing there was a reason they hadn't come for me. Eventually, I succeeded in finding their whereabouts. Back then, I believed there was a reason they hadn't come for me, and I was convinced that if I visited them, they would welcome me with open arms. That naive hope was quickly shattered. Both my mother and father were living happily with their new families. I remember feeling tears well up as I watched from a street corner while my father's family enjoyed a barbecue in their yard. I couldn't bring myself to call out to them. My mother was even worse. When I visited, she asked in a panic, "Do you need money?" Apparently, she had told her current husband that she had no children from her previous marriage. She panicked, thinking I had come to blackmail her for money. I wasn't welcomed or apologized to, just treated as a nuisance. Deeply hurt, I left my mother's place without shedding a tear. In my hand were several crumpled $100 bills that she had thrust at me. I see. My parents are divorced too. I guess you and I are alike. So, did you run into the fire on that same day? Anna sighed, her eyes distant as if remembering something. Encouraged to continue, I resumed my story slowly. While walking in a daze, I saw flames rising from a small one-story house. The fire trucks hadn't arrived yet, and neighbors were trying to extinguish the fire with garden hoses. I watched in a daze, blending in with the onlookers. Someone gasped, and when I turned around I saw a girl with her mouth covered in frozen. She must have been connected to the burning house. When I tried to speak to her as she trembled, she noticed me, looked startled as if she was about to jump, and then turned on her heel and ran away. The fire truck still hadn't arrived. Having come to this town for the first time to visit my mother, I had no sense of the area. I didn't know who lived in that house or who might be inside at that time. But from the panic around me, I could tell someone was trapped inside. I walked unsteadily towards the burning house. Looking back, I might have been acting out of desperation. I slipped through the adults trying to put out the fire and found myself inside the house before I realized it. I could hear the screams and shouts of the adults behind me. It struck me as funny, and I remember laughing out loud. Strangers worried about me, while my own parents didn't want me. The absurdity of my misfortune made me laugh. The fire hadn't spread throughout the house yet, it was smoky and hard to breathe but still bearable. For a moment, I thought it might be okay if my life ended here. To die trying to save someone in a fire, a heroic end like that would make my grandparents proud and justify my existence. As the fire consumed the furniture with a crackling roar, I slowly moved further inside. I wanted to know who was trapped. I had no intention of rescuing anyone. I was a terrible person. Stop spacing out. Help me. A voice snapped me back to reality, as if slapping me across the face. I looked and saw a girl with a soot-blackened face crawling on the floor. The fire hasn't reached us yet, so you can get out on your own, right? I pointed towards the entrance, annoyed by the younger girl's scolding. Help me. I can't do it alone. As she crawled towards me, her legs were so thin they seemed to lack any muscle. A wheelchair lay toppled over in the corner. You can't walk. Isn't it obvious? Hurry up and help me, she commanded, gripping my arm tightly. Her unexpected strength made me stagger, and I hit my side against a cabinet handle. I felt a searing pain and smelled something unpleasant. It seemed the handle was made of brass. As I staggered, my shirt rode up, and the handle branded my side like a hot iron. Ow! That hurts! I cried out instinctively. The smoke was getting thicker. It hurts, right? That's proof you're alive. I still have things to do, so get me out of here. You came in looking like your life was over. But it's not. I wondered how long she had been watching me. Startled, I looked at her. I felt a strong light in her eyes. It was a powerful will to live. Why do you look like you've given up on life? I'll take care of your life, so struggle a bit more. Her words pushed me, and I quickly picked her up. I'll never forget how light she felt. Light, but carrying a heavy life. The rest was a blur. As soon as I rushed out the front door, water was sprayed on me, and firefighters began hosing down the fire. That's when I blacked out. All I could focus on was the stinging pain of the burn on my side. That's my heroic story. It's pathetic, isn't it? Just a youthful folly, I said, laughing self-deprecatingly. Anna shook her head slowly. Her long hair swayed gently, and a pleasant scent wafted over. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you remember unpleasant things. She touched my cheek with her slender fingers. Don't cry, she said. Startled, I touched my cheek and realized I had been crying without knowing it. I suddenly felt embarrassed and covered my face with both hands. Please don't look at me. I'm sorry for crying over something like this. Are you embarrassed? That's cute, Anna teased. Her words made me even more embarrassed, and I couldn't lift my head. Want to hear an embarrassing story of mine? Without waiting for my response, Anna began to speak. She told me about her childhood. Like me, she had desperately searched for her divorced parents. The difference was that my parents weren't happy. Her father was lost to alcohol, and her mother, who had always been mentally fragile, was living in a mental hospital. Neither my mother nor my father recognized me. It's laughable, right? I couldn't help but look up at her after this unexpected confession, meeting her shy smile. So, I understand your despair. She said this quietly, looking straight into my eyes. After that, I had an argument with my childhood friend. Feeling desperate, she visited her childhood friend's house and talked about her parents. She laughed self-deprecatingly, saying she just wanted some comfort. But instead of comforting her, her friend laughed at her story. Her friend said, "Kids grow up without parents, and life goes on," which made Anna so angry that she pushed her friend and ran away. And then things got really bad. She stopped talking at that point. Sensing it wasn't the right time to ask for more details, I averted my gaze. A pair of expensive-looking high heels lay discarded nearby. The discarded high heels reminded me of the toppled wheelchair from that time. Slowly, I stood up, picked up the heels, and gently placed them on Anna's left foot. "Thank you," she said in a barely audible voice. I could only nod in response. From that day, after sharing our secrets, the distance between Anna and me gradually lessened. She remained a strict boss at work, but we began to share private moments, like meals and movies. Although we both felt a mutual attraction, we couldn't seem to cross the line. We shared many frustratingly ambiguous moments. "David, what should I do?" One day, after work, Anna stopped me, looking pale. I had never seen her so shaken. "What's wrong? You look really pale." Her anxiety seemed to infect me, and my heart began to pound. I got a message from Melissa, my childhood friend. She got my contact information through mutual friends. I gently patted her back, trying to calm her. "I can't face her. She'll never forgive me." Her uncharacteristically timid words left me stunned. Who could possibly intimidate Anna this much? I couldn't help but feel curious about this person. "If you don't want to meet her alone, would you like me to come with you?" The words tumbled out of my mouth before I could think. Anna looked at me in surprise. Realizing how presumptuous I had been, I quickly tried to backtrack. I'm sorry for being so forward, especially since I'm not your boyfriend or anything." Unable to bear her intense gaze, I tried to cover up my blunder. She must think I'm being too presumptuous. I started to sweat, worried that I had ruined our budding relationship with my careless words. "Sure. Will you come with me? If you will, I might be able to apologize to her." Anna murmured absently. "If I can help, I'd be glad to." I felt a mix of relief and excitement at her unexpected response, and I must have looked quite odd to anyone watching. But at that moment, I was genuinely happy that Anna was relying on me. I finally had a chance to be on the same level as her. That's how I felt. We were supposed to meet her childhood friend tomorrow night. The place was the Spanish restaurant where my welcome party had been held. As the end of the workday approached, I felt more and more nervous, almost dizzy. Still, after work, seeing her freshly made-up face gave me a boost of confidence. I didn't know what had happened, but I swore to myself that I would always be on her side. "She's probably already there. She's very punctual," Anna said, reminiscing. I straightened up in front of the restaurant, readying myself. A bit embarrassed, I decided to say what I'd been thinking. "No matter what happens, I'm always on your side, Anna," I said with a smile. She looked a bit taken aback, then gave me a very happy smile. "Thank you," she said as she opened the door to the restaurant. The restaurant wasn't reserved for us today, so there were many other customers. The place was lively and packed. She told the server about our reservation. We were led to a table in the courtyard. In the dim light, I could see someone already seated there. Anna squeezed my hand tightly. Surprised, I tried to stay calm and smiled, saying, "It's okay." She led me to the table where her childhood friend was waiting. "Melissa, it's been so many years." At Anna's call, the seated woman looked up. A small face with very pale skin. But there was a red scar on her slender, pale neck. She brushed her long black hair over her back with a delicate hand and smiled at us. "It's really been a long time, Anna. How have you been?" Her voice was a bit husky. It was almost like it was worn from drinking. "Is this your husband? Or your boyfriend?" she teased, looking up at Anna. "We're not like that," Anna said as she sat down. I hurried to sit as well. "Melissa, this is my coworker, David. I wasn't feeling well, so he came with me." Anna introduced me. "I'm David. Nice to meet you." I greeted her, and Melissa also gave a slight nod, saying, "Hello." Anna had said they were childhood friends, but Melissa looked younger than me. Anna was like an older sister to me. I'd been looking for her for a long time, Melissa said when we all had our drinks. I was worried I might have hurt her. Anna was surprised by Melissa's words. But I don't regret what I said back then. I believed you should live your own life, Anna. There are plenty of people who could comfort you with empty words. Saying this, Melissa poured red wine from the decanter into her empty glass. She lowered her eyes slightly and gave a self-deprecating smile. Maybe she was recalling the situation that caused their falling out. I realized that much later in life. I used to be swayed by those shallow, kind words, Anna said, downing her wine in one gulp. I felt a bit worried that she might be drinking too much. As an apology, I'll prove that you can shape your own destiny. That's why I found you, Anna, Melissa said, clicking her heels and standing up from her chair. I watched her casually, not thinking much of it. But Anna, beside me, widened her eyes in shock, unable to speak. She seemed to forget to breathe for a moment. This is the future I achieved on my own. Melissa clicked her heels as she stood beside Anna. Then she twirled around, making her long skirt flare out like petals. Wait, you can walk? How? Why? How? Anna repeated how in confusion, and Melissa smiled wryly. I couldn't just talk big to you without proving it myself. The rehab was tough, but I managed. Sorry it took so long, Melissa said, and tears welled up in Anna's eyes. Apparently, Melissa had been in a wheelchair. Now, she was spinning around in front of us, fully recovered. It must have taken a tremendous amount of rehab and effort. And you, stand up for a moment, she commanded with a slender finger. I stood up, confused, and the next moment, she yanked my shirt out of my pants and looked at my side. I was stunned by the sudden action. I knew it. It's still there. Look, Anna, this heart. Remember? Melissa laughed, pointing at my side, urging Anna to look. With tears still in her eyes, Anna peered at my side. There was the scar from the burn. The heart-shaped mark from the handle was still clearly visible as a burn scar. That tacky handle design, just as it was. Melissa laughed heartily, seeing the 3 heart-shaped burn marks. I couldn't believe it, but her reaction was unmistakable. Could you be the girl in the wheelchair from back then? Melissa nodded yes and looked at me with incredibly kind eyes. Her compassionate expression made my heart skip a beat. How did you recognize me? Melissa chuckled softly at my question. Who wouldn't look into the person who saved their life? It seemed Melissa had been looking into me for a long time. And she said she was surprised by the coincidence that I became Anna's coworker. Thanks for saving me back then. I'm returning your life that I owed. But honestly, I wanted to keep you all to myself. Because you were my hero. But I'll let Anna have you, Melissa said, smiling playfully at Anna. She looked a bit sad, and I didn't think it was just my imagination. Such a coincidence. So, you saw me run away scared when the fire broke out, David? Anna's words brought back the memory of the girl with a pale face running away from the scene. That was Anna. It feels like divine intervention. But I'm satisfied now that everything is resolved. God sure knows how to pull the strings. So, what exactly is your relationship? Melissa asked with a teasing grin, and Anna and I looked at each other as if on cue. Seeing Anna's face turn bright red, I knew this was the moment to make my move. Anna is my precious person. She's the only woman I want to protect by my side forever. I was surprised by the loudness of my own voice coming from the depths of my stomach. After a moment of silence, there was loud applause from inside the restaurant and from the other tables in the courtyard. Way to go, man, someone shouted, making me suddenly feel embarrassed. So, what's your answer? Prompted for a response, Anna nodded slightly and said, I want you by my side too. I felt like a miracle had happened. There was another round of applause and cheers from the restaurant. Melissa looked at us with satisfaction. Now I've repaid my debt. You better make sure you're happy with Anna, or I won't forgive you. I nodded yes vigorously at Melissa's words and squeezed Anna's hand tightly. We'll definitely be happy. Our lives are ours to live. I felt incredibly proud of myself as I said those words. Today, we are on our annual company trip at an inn in the neighboring state. During the banquet, our slightly tipsy manager, Chris, was laughing loudly. However, in the corner, a new female employee, Emily, who only has a high school diploma, was sitting alone. She didn't seem to be in good spirits. Is everything okay? You don't seem very cheerful. I asked, unable to hold back my concern despite feeling it might be meddlesome. Emily, with tears in her eyes, said, Chris told me that if I don't have a college degree, I'm not a real employee and should go home. Chris was saying such things again. Chris was a master at looking down on people and constantly saying terrible things. I had reached my limit. I couldn't let Chris do whatever he wanted any longer. I contacted someone, and Chris was about to learn Emily's true identity. My name is Alex, and I'm 20 years old. I just graduated from a technical school this fall and am in my first year as a working adult. I've always liked tinkering with computers and wanted to study them more, so I decided to enroll in a technical school. My parents often told me that it would be better to go to college. But I decided to attend a technical school where I could learn more about computers in detail. Even after I enrolled, my parents kept saying, the job market in the States values degrees. So it will be tough with just a technical school diploma. It's not too late to transfer to a college. No, I've decided to work hard at the technical school. I told my parents this many times, but they continued to repeat the same thing. Both of my parents work. They both graduated from prestigious colleges and held high positions at their companies. As a result, I was often left home alone from a young age. I guess my parents cared so much about my education because they themselves graduated from top colleges. But back then, I just casually ignored their words. Looking back, I might have benefited from listening to them a bit more. After graduating from technical school, I joined a trading company and was assigned to the IT management department. It was the job I had always wanted, so I was excited to start working there. However, reality was not that sweet. On my first day, I nervously approached the door of the IT management office. Then, a woman in a brand new suit called out to me from behind. Are you the new employee? Yes. My name is Alex, and I'm assigned to the IT management department starting today. I replied energetically. Then, the woman looked somewhat relieved. I'm also a new employee. My name is Emily. It's reassuring to have another new employee. Looking forward to working with you, she said. Her friendliness made me smile as well. It felt reassuring not to be alone. Let's do our best together. Yes. Emily and I entered the office. Suddenly, all eyes in the office turned towards us. The atmosphere in the office was tense and a bit intimidating. As I was overwhelmed by the atmosphere, a large man started walking towards us. Tisk. Both Emily and I were startled. As soon as Chris saw our faces, he clicked his tongue in disapproval. While we stood there in shock, Chris began to say something surprising. Why does the IT department always get low-educated people like you? What is HR thinking? Low-educated. I couldn't believe my ears. I had never been insulted like this by someone I just met. Emily was equally shocked. I'm Chris, the manager of the IT department. Since you are assigned here, do your best for the department. I won't tolerate any mistakes. Chris didn't give us time to introduce ourselves before he sat down and told us to get to work. Understood. I will do my best. I said and went to the desk I was shown, but Chris's insults kept coming. You low-educated fools need to work harder than anyone else here. Another disappointing batch of new hires this year, what a shame. I could only sit at my desk, staring down. Then, a senior employee, Mike, sitting next to me, spoke up. Chris always treats those without a college degree like that. I'm one of those people too. Don't let it get to you. Let's work hard. Mike whispered kindly to me, looking around to ensure no one else heard. Thank you. I feel like I've lost all my confidence. I'm also a technical school graduate, and I'm in my second year here. If I can manage, so can you, Alex. As Mike and I were talking, Chris approached us from behind. Are you low-educated guys bonding? Here, this is your job, data entry. Don't mess it up. Chris handed me a large stack of documents. Mike looked down, avoiding Chris's gaze. Yes, understood. I received the materials and, as instructed by Chris, started typing them in. Once Chris left the office, Mike looked at me. I'm really fed up with Chris. He's always belittling me for not having a college degree. I want to work hard and someday prove him wrong, Mike said with determination. Mike's eyes were filled with resolve. At the end of the workday, I was ready to leave. My first day was nothing like I imagined and had left me exhausted. I wanted to head home early and rest, so I hurried out of the company. But then I saw Emily. She was holding a large stack of documents, heading somewhere. Emily? Aren't you going home? I'm supposed to shred these documents as Chris told me to, she said, moving frantically. Emily was about to head to the copy room alone. I couldn't just leave her alone, so I accompanied her to the copy room. Sorry for dragging you along. This is something I should be doing by myself. It's impossible to shred such a large amount of documents alone. You're an important colleague, and I wanted to help. Emily looked like she was about to cry. Then she said something surprising. Maybe I shouldn't be working here. I love working with computers and wanted this job, but as a high school graduate, I can't be useful to anyone. Chris also said high school graduates are useless. Chris said that? I was confused by Emily's words. It was shocking enough that Chris called us useless, but it was even more absurd to label us that way on our first day. Seeing Emily so sad, I couldn't help but speak up. Emily, if you don't mind, would you like to have dinner together? Emily's eyes widened in surprise. I had never gone out to eat with a girl before. Though I was exhausted and wanted to go home, I couldn't leave Emily feeling down, and I wanted to talk a bit as fellow new employees. You want to eat with someone like me? She asked, sounding unsure after a day of harsh words from Chris. Of course. I'd like to chat as fellow newbies. Hearing this, Emily nodded happily. After finishing the tasks Chris had given us, we headed to a nearby stylish restaurant. Once seated at the counter, Emily looked excitedly at the menu. I've never been to a place like this before. It's exciting. Maybe it's because I get excited over things like this that Chris calls me useless. Emily stuck out her tongue and made a playful face. I shook my head. I don't understand why having just a high school diploma or graduating from a technical school is seen as a problem. I don't get why anyone would call us useless. Emily nodded in agreement. Since neither of us can drink alcohol, we toasted with juice. Emily quietly enjoyed the food at first, but then she started sharing her past. Actually, I was often sick and couldn't attend high school regularly. Because of that, I had to give up on going to college, she said, looking down. She seemed to regret her past. Looking at her, I said, I didn't go to college, but I have no regrets. I believe you have many qualities that Chris doesn't see. You should have more confidence in yourself. I said this while taking a bite of the grilled chicken in front of me. You're right. I won't let Chris get to me. Let's work hard together. Emily seemed to regain some confidence and smiled. From there, we shared stories about our past, talked about celebrities, and had a lively conversation. But then, the person we least wanted to see walked in through the restaurant entrance. Well, look at that. The useless duo having fun together. It was Chris. He had brought some of his highly educated subordinates to the restaurant. Emily couldn't even look at him and stared at the floor. Good evening. I greeted Chris, still surprised. But Chris ignored me and laughed. I don't want to talk to low-educated folks even outside of work. And walked to the back. The other customers there looked at Chris with disbelief. He started the conversation, so what is he talking about? I had reached my limit. But it seemed I wasn't the only one. Emily, shaking with anger, stood up. I tried to stop her, but it was too late. She spoke loudly. Chris, don't you think your words are too harsh? I might be a useless high school graduate, but I'm a human being. And it hurts to hear such things. The restaurant fell silent, and everyone was staring at Emily. She continued, out of breath, desperately pleading with Chris. The other customers who've been watching this started clapping for Emily. Feeling uncomfortable, Chris clicked his tongue and said, "A high school grad acting all high and mighty. Remember this," and stormed out of the restaurant. Emily looked somewhat proud. "Emily, that was amazing. But are you okay saying that?" I asked. With a wry smile, Emily said, "I'm scared about tomorrow, but I didn't say anything wrong. I'll be fine," and started looking at her phone. Suddenly, she stood up hurriedly and started putting on her coat. "Sorry, Alex. My dad, who worries a lot, has come to pick me up, so I have to go." It was getting late. I stood up too. After paying the bill, we left the restaurant, and there was Emily's father waiting in his car. He smiled at me as soon as he saw me. "Hey Dad. This is Alex, my coworker. Thanks to him, I was able to get through today." Emily introduced me to her father. Emily's father smiled kindly at me. "Thank you for looking after my daughter. It's her first day at work, so I got worried and came to pick her up. You might find it silly, but no matter how old she gets, I can't help but worry about her. The love a parent has for their child is a beautiful thing." I genuinely thought so. "No, I think it's wonderful. If I had a daughter, I think I'd do the same." Emily's father laughed at my words. "If you like, I can give you a ride home too." Emily's father said that and gave me a ride as well. What a kind person he is. I took advantage of Emily's father's offer. In the car, we had a pleasant conversation, and I enjoyed the time spent with Emily and her father. Even after arriving home, I remained in the afterglow of that enjoyable time. Though I was exhausted from dealing with Chris all day, the kindness of Emily's family lifted my spirits. I was glad I went out to eat with Emily. I thought so as I got into bed. However, I had no idea of the terrible events that were about to unfold. The next day, I headed to work with heavy footsteps. What would Chris say today? No matter what he said, I resolved to focus on my work. I was thinking about such things. When I entered the office, both Emily and Mike were already there. "Thanks for yesterday." My dad said he had a great time. "Thank you for the ride home. Let's go out to eat again sometime." Emily nodded at my words. Then Mike approached me. "I'd like to go out for drinks with you too, Alex." Mike is making a playful face. "Of course. That sounds fun." We were enjoying a brief moment of light-hearted conversation. But then, a voice brought us back to reality. "Having fun, are you? Must be nice to slack off first thing in the morning." We quickly returned to our desks. It was still before work hours, so there shouldn't have been any problem with chatting. Chris seemed determined to belittle us. As I was feeling increasingly irritated, Chris called out to Emily loudly. "Hey, Emily. The light bulb is about to go out. Replace it." Emily, looking surprised, asked, "Should I contact the admin department?" In our company, the admin department handles maintenance issues. So Emily asked Chris this. However, Chris looked at Emily and snorted, "Huh? You're the one who's going to change it. Even someone as incompetent as you should be able to change a light bulb, right?" Everyone in the office started looking at Emily with pity. Emily quietly said, "Understood," and climbed a stepladder to change the bulb. The ceiling in the office was high, and even on the stepladder, she had to stretch to reach the bulb. It was unbelievable to ask a woman to do such a task. I couldn't take my eyes off Emily, worried as she precariously reached for the bulb. Then, suddenly, Emily slipped and almost fell off the stepladder. Mike, who was watching with concern, caught her just in time, preventing her from falling. But Chris was standing nearby, laughing loudly. "Ha ha. Can't even manage a ladder, can you? This is hilarious." Everyone in the office shot him cold looks, but he didn't seem to notice and kept laughing. Watching Chris laugh, I felt a deep irritation. If Emily had fallen off the ladder, it could have been a disaster. I couldn't understand how he could find this funny. He was probably holding a grudge from the restaurant incident and wanted to harass Emily. I was too stunned to say anything. Emily also looked visibly upset. Chris's behavior got worse after that. "Alex. Emily. I want some bread. Go get it. Emily and I couldn't believe what we were hearing. He could buy it himself. But we couldn't protest, so we went to buy it during work hours. It didn't stop there. Chris assigned us all sorts of tasks unrelated to IT management, like errands and cleaning. Both Emily and I were fed up with Chris, but quitting would mean letting him win. With a bit of stubbornness, we worked hard to complete the tasks he assigned. One day, as we arrived at work, the office was unusually bustling. Curious, I started working when Mike approached me. Next week is the company trip. Everyone is going, so you're coming too, right? I was surprised. Chris hadn't mentioned anything about a trip to me. Emily also seemed surprised, having overheard our conversation. A company trip. Am I allowed to join? It's a company trip, so it's obvious, right? Even if Chris says something, a company trip is part of the employee benefits. So of course we can participate. Mike said with a laugh. He told me that this year's trip was to a famous inn in the neighboring state. We'll get to enjoy some delicious food too. Mike added excitedly. But I felt conflicted. I knew Chris would likely insult us during the trip too. Thinking about it made me feel uneasy. I'm sure Chris doesn't want someone with my low level of education to participate either. Seeing my expression, Mike whispered, "Are you planning not to go?" I agreed hesitantly, and Mike looked a bit angry. "If you don't go, you'll be playing right into Chris's hands." Is that what you want? But, seeing my sad expression, Emily joined the conversation. Alex, let's go. We can't let Chris win. It won't be scary if we're together, Emily said, encouraging me. She was right. I hadn't done anything wrong. Chris was the one in the wrong for looking down on us for our education. I decided to stand up to Chris. On the day of the company trip, I was packing my bags at home. Noticing my gloomy expression, my parents approached me. You don't look excited for the trip. Did something happen? Since joining the company, I hadn't told my parents about the troubles I was facing. I didn't want to hear them say, "I told you education is important." But seeing their worried faces, I couldn't keep it to myself and told them everything about Chris. To my surprise, my parents listened to my story with genuine concern. I can't believe someone like that is a manager. That's right. But people like him will get their comeuppance. You should just enjoy the company trip. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. My parents, who had always been fixated on academic achievements, were now supporting me wholeheartedly. You can always talk to us. If anything happens, don't hesitate to ask for help. My father said that to me. I realized I wasn't alone. Feeling thankful, I left the house. The company trip started with everyone gathering at the office before taking the train. Emily and Mike were already there. But Chris was nowhere to be seen. I hoped he wouldn't come, but that hope was quickly dashed. Sorry, I'm late. Huh? Even the low-educated ones are coming? Good grief. Here we go again. I tried to tune out Chris's words as we headed to the station. On the train, Chris's taunts escalated. How did you even think you could get a job here with such low qualifications? The nerve of you useless people. Other passengers on the train stared at Chris in disbelief. I suppressed my trembling anger and ignored him completely. If I listened seriously, I would end up getting sick. Emily, sitting next to me, seemed to be doing the same, fiddling with her phone to avoid looking at Chris. Eventually, we arrived at the inn. The inn staff lined up at the entrance to welcome us. I'm sharing a room with Mike. Feeling relieved inside, I put my luggage in the room. For a while, I chatted with Mike and enjoyed myself. When it was time for the banquet, Mike and I headed to the large hall. The hall was filled with lavish food. Everyone was already seated, but the atmosphere was tense. Chris's loud laughter was the only sound. He seemed a bit tipsy from the alcohol he had already consumed. Then I saw Emily sitting alone in the corner. Her eyes red and looking downcast. Concerned, I approached her. You don't seem well. Is something wrong? I asked. Hearing my words, Emily began to cry. Chris told me that anyone without a college degree isn't a real employee and should leave. I don't think I can take it anymore. I was shocked by her words. No wonder the atmosphere was so tense. Chris had gone too far. I couldn't let him get away with this. I made a decision and called someone on the phone. After some time had passed, I calmed Emily down and finished eating the delicious food. Then I stood up and walked over to the laughing Chris. Chris, apologize to Emily for saying she isn't a real employee because she doesn't have a college degree, I demanded angrily. Mike's eyes widened in surprise. Chris looked shocked, then started laughing again. Why should I apologize? I was just stating a fact. Do you think you're some kind of hero? Don't you realize that some people can't go to college because of their circumstances? Chris clicked his tongue. Excuses, excuses. It's probably just because their parents are also low educated and didn't care if they went to college. I'd love to see what their parents look like. Insulting someone's parents was beyond belief. Who did Chris think he was? Just as I was about to shout in anger, the sliding doors of the banquet hall burst open. You want to see their parents, do you? I am Emily's father. Emily's father had been listening to everything and was furious. Dad! Emily exclaimed in surprise. Emily's father? Did you come to take her home because you're worried? Just take her and go. She doesn't deserve to be here on this trip. Our coworkers, noticing who Emily's father was, began to look uneasy. And they are desperately trying to convey something to Chris. Chris, this man is. But Chris was already drunk and didn't notice. Fine. I'll leave with my daughter, but you don't need to come to the company anymore. What? Chris finally looked at Emily's father and realized who he was. The room fell silent. You're Mr. Williams. Why are you here? Now you realize. I came because I was worried about my daughter. Mr. Williams. I'm so sorry. I was drunk and said terrible things. So, he knew he was saying horrible things. His face turned pale as the realization set in. Yes, Emily's father was the company president. The day Emily and I had dinner together, Mr. Williams had introduced himself to me. It was then that I realized he was Emily's father. Mr. Williams, worried about his only daughter, had given me his contact information in case anything happened. I never thought I'd have to call him, but seeing Emily in tears made me realize it was time. When I called, Mr. Williams said he'd be right here and hung up. What are you saying now? Telling an employee to leave a company trip because they don't have a degree is wrong. Who do you think you are? Hearing Mr. Williams's words, Chris is completely looking down. Do you treat employees without degrees like this all the time? Mr. Williams shouted. Then Chris hastily started making excuses. It was clear that he wanted to resolve the situation peacefully at all costs. No. This is just because I was drunk. I don't usually act like this. Chris was lying through his teeth. I could only sigh at his dishonesty. Then, Mike spoke up loudly. Chris always treats non-degree employees like this, even at work. Mr. Williams's face grew even redder with anger. Chris, if you like degrees so much, let me tell you something. What? Mr. Williams glared at Chris, his voice rising. I started this company with just a high school diploma. I wanted to go to college, but my family was poor. I had to give up that dream. Chris wiped the cold sweat from his forehead with a towel. He seems to be at a loss for words. A high school graduate founded this company. If you don't like it, then you don't need to come back to the office. Chris, his voice shaking, desperately pleaded. No, that's not it at all. I want to work under you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams refused to listen to Chris any further. He took the downcast Emily by the hand and began to leave the banquet hall. But before exiting, he turned back and looked at Chris once more. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Alex's father is an executive at one of our key partners. He's not someone you can look down on. Know your place. Chris's face turned pale as he repeatedly glanced at me in shock. No way. Chris sank to the ground. Mr. Williams gave me a reassuring smile. Alex, I'm sorry you've had to endure this. It's my fault for not keeping a closer eye on things. I never thought someone in my company would judge people based on their education. Rest assured, such individuals will not remain here," he said as he left with Emily. Yes, my father is an executive at a major partner of the company where I work. He had informed me of this when I decided to join the company. I had only shared this information with Mr. Williams and Emily. It's because I thought there was no need to talk. That's why I was so infuriated when Chris insulted my parents. I knew how hard my father had worked to achieve his position. No one who knew nothing about my parents had the right to look down on them. After Mr. Williams and Emily left, the banquet hall fell into a heavy silence, and the event ended quietly. The next day, Mike and I left the inn quietly. Following through on his promise, Mr. Williams fired Chris for his inappropriate behavior. Chris protested until the end, but to no avail. Before leaving, Chris made a spiteful remark. "A low-educated fool like you will crumble, no matter how educated your parents are." His words echoed hollowly through the office. Then, for the first time, my colleagues, who had been silently observing, spoke out loudly in unison. "Just leave. You're the one who doesn't belong here. If anyone's going to crumble, it's you, Chris. You're the one who's disgraceful." Chris turned bright red as he stormed out of the office. Everyone clapped as he left. "Finally, peace is returning," Emily said, and Mike nodded in agreement. This incident taught us that karma does catch up with those who do wrong. A year later, I am thriving in the IT management department. "Alex, about this weekend, do you want to check out this new restaurant?" "Sure, let's go." Emily and I had started dating with our parents' approval. I never imagined our relationship would develop this way, but thanks to Emily, my days are filled with joy. Someday, I hope to build a wonderful family with Emily. During the wedding reception, the microphone was handed to the mayor, Mr. Anderson, the father-in-law of my brother David. "I am very happy that my beloved daughter is marrying a reliable man." Mr. Anderson began his speech, but his expression didn't look cheerful at all. As I wondered about this, the topic suddenly shifted to me. "Since everyone will find out eventually, I want to let you know first. It's about David's brother. He didn't go to high school." Mr. Anderson's sudden statement changed the atmosphere in the room. People started glancing at me, and their stares felt piercing. "You must be worried about having someone like him as a relative." "I feel the same. A junior high school graduate is a disgrace to the family." His words echoed in my head through the microphone. I'd been teased about my education before, but this was the first time I was humiliated in front of so many people. Moreover, this time it was rejection from someone who was about to become family. I wanted to leave the venue as soon as possible and hide somewhere where no one could see me. However, it wouldn't be acceptable for a close relative of the groom to leave halfway through the reception. As I was looking down, I noticed a commotion up front. When I looked up, David had stood up and taken the microphone from Mr. Anderson. Then, right after, Mr. Anderson's body started to shake. "My name is Mike Johnson. I'm in my 30s and work in the local construction industry. I work for a well-known company in the area, and I've been entrusted with a decent position, so people often envy me. However, I wasn't always successful. I can say that I managed to climb up the position despite being in an underprivileged environment. Growing up in a single-parent household, I had to lead a frugal life, so I didn't have an environment conducive to studying. In elementary school, the family was just my brother David, me and my mother. My mother worked from morning till night. So in the mornings, we got ready by ourselves, went to after-school care, and then went home to eat bread crusts to stave off hunger. Sometimes, when there wasn't any food, we distracted ourselves with games to forget our hunger. I wasn't good at studying or sports, and I didn't have any dreams for the future as a kid, but David was different. He was excellent in academics and sports. He always shined at sports day and came first in his grade at the marathon. "I want to become a police officer and make the community safe," he declared in front of the whole school, and I was proud of him. As we entered middle school, it became inevitable to think realistically about the future. While David maintained his dream of becoming a police officer, I drifted through school without any particular goals. "It's time to get serious about your future. What are you planning to do? Called out by my homeroom teacher, Mr. Smith, to think about my future. I realized that I couldn't let my mother bear all the financial burdens of school and living expenses. Therefore, it was only natural for me to think about working and earning money after graduating from middle school. Ignoring Mr. Smith's strong recommendation, how about at least finishing high school? I started working at my current company right after graduating from middle school. That's how we spent our youth and grew up. David achieved his dream of becoming a police officer and works hard every day. Although we were a close family, work made it difficult to find time to meet and share updates. One day, I was surprised to hear from David after a long time. He told me he was going to be married. What shocked me even more was that his fiancée was Emily, the daughter of Mr. Anderson, the mayor of our town. David met Emily through an introduction of a friend, but he didn't know she was mayor's daughter at first. He was stunned when he went to announce their engagement and found the mayor waiting. David had met him several times in the line of duty but never imagined he would become family, so he felt very nervous, as he told me. "Mike, I know you're busy, but I need you to meet my new family. Mom came to the initial meeting, but you need to be introduced too." "Of course. I need to make a good impression on him since we work together." I hung up the phone, looking forward to the day. The day of the dinner with Emily and Mr. Anderson came quickly. I usually wear work clothes or cheap casual suits, so I bought a new suit for the occasion. Feeling unlike myself, I waited for them at the restaurant. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Thank you for having us today." Emily entered the private room with Mr. Anderson, a familiar figure from neighborhood bulletins and local news. David and I stood up to greet them. "Thank you for your time. I'm Mike, David's brother." "It's a pleasure to meet you," I introduced myself. Emily smiled warmly and greeted me back. She was very pleasant, and her demeanor reflected her good upbringing. Mr. Anderson, however, seemed different from his friendly TV persona. On TV, he was always engaging and responsive with the townspeople, but here, he was standing with his arms crossed. Even while waiting for drinks, he didn't say a word, just sat there silently. I tried to make conversation with him to ease the tension. "Thank you for making time for us, despite your busy schedule, Mayor," I said as I poured beer for him when the drinks arrived. Mr. Anderson glared at me and responded coldly. "I thought this was supposed to be a private occasion." "Please, don't call me Mayor," he said in a chilling tone. His words sent a shiver down my spine, and I quickly apologized. Indeed, being a mayor in a small town means always having to put on a good face and rarely finding a moment of peace. Always being recognized and unable to act freely is much like being a celebrity. Understanding this, I tried to empathize with him. "I'm sorry for making you uncomfortable. I didn't consider your feelings," I apologized again. Mr. Anderson scoffed and took a long drink of his beer. Despite the awkward start, the dinner progressed smoothly. Thanks to the excellent food from the renowned restaurant and the efforts of David and Emily to keep the conversation going. The mood shifted again when Emily asked me, "Could you tell us more about yourself, Mike? I'm very interested in your background too. Which university did you attend?" he asked with frowning face. I couldn't meet his gaze. Education was always a sensitive topic for me. Since turning 30, it rarely came up, but whenever it did, it still unsettled me. I tried to respond confidently. "Actually, I started working right after junior high school to support my mother, who was working tirelessly. I didn't attend high school. Working in construction wasn't easy, but it allowed me to help my mother. So, I didn't graduate from high school, let alone attend university." My voice trailed off, afraid of sounding defensive. "I've worked hard to live my life and have no regrets. However, I don't have anything particularly impressive to boast about either." My timid demeanor must have been evident to Mr. Anderson. He looked down on me, laughing through his nose, and said, "I thought it was a joke when I heard you didn't finish high school. I can't believe it's true. You must have led a pathetic life without much effort. Or are you expecting financial support from us now?" His sudden harsh words left me speechless. While my background may not be impressive, I haven't lived pathetically, nor do I expect to rely on anyone. On the contrary, I've been given responsibilities in my current job and will be involved in significant local projects. Even Emily felt uncomfortable and spoke up. Dad, isn't that too rude? Besides, Mike is contributing to society. Focusing on academic background is such an outdated way of thinking. David didn't nod, but his expression showed he agreed with Emily. Mr. Anderson, still unsatisfied, told Emily, "Stay out of this," and turned back to face me. "As you know, I am the mayor of this town. While my daughter's marriage will be welcomed, people will be interested in who she's marrying. And some will certainly investigate the family background." I understood what he was getting at. In a small town, news of someone's marriage quickly turns into gossip. With Mr. Anderson's daughter, people would undoubtedly dig into every detail. If they found out there was a high school dropout in the family, it wouldn't sit well with him. The more he spoke, the more pathetic I felt. Then Mr. Anderson said something that left me in disbelief. "David is a man my daughter loves, and being a police officer makes him very trustworthy." "But what about you?" Sighing, he continued with a look of disdain. "Frankly, even if David becomes part of the family, I want to sever ties with you. Can you accept that?" I wanted to believe it was a bad joke, but he looked at me with a serious expression. Even Emily seemed shocked and couldn't find words to respond. In that tense moment, it was David who spoke up. "Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, I could only graduate from high school, attend college, and go to the police academy because of my brother. Without him, I wouldn't be where I am today." David continued with a passionate explanation. He detailed how I, having started working right after junior high school to support our hard-working mother, had covered his school expenses. Indeed, I rarely spent the money I earned on myself or indulged in luxuries. When David was in high school, he was too busy with his extracurricular activities to have time for a part-time job. So I earned his tuition and allowance. When he wanted to attend supplemental classes for college entrance exams, I also managed that expense. I was willing to spend any amount for David's education and aspirations because it was never a burden for me. On the contrary, I felt proud of David for achieving things I could never accomplish, like scoring well in exams and excelling in sports. David's hard work paid off, and he got accepted into a prestigious private university. Our mother was proud of David's efforts but also worried about how to cover the costs of living alone and tuition. "Mom, I'll handle David's tuition, so don't worry about it." "But you really need to slow down with work," I told her. "Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. But Mike, you work so hard and don't spend any money on yourself." "Don't worry about me," she replied. To support both our mother's relentless work and David's dreams, I worked even harder. In college, David had given up his dream of becoming a police officer to focus on his studies, but something must have sparked his interest again. As he started saying, "I want to become a police officer once more." Although David focused on research during college, he eventually rekindled his desire to become a police officer. "Don't worry about the police academy fees. Just focus on your dream," I told him. David smiled and reassured me. "The police academy pays a salary, so there's no need to worry about money." He then turned serious and said, "Thank you for everything. From now on, I'll be independent and make sure Mom doesn't have to struggle. Please start using your money for yourself." I vividly remember David's tearful expression as he said those words. David explained to Mr. Anderson how much he owed to me and my selfless support. Although I felt embarrassed, I sensed Emily looking at me with respect after hearing David's story. "Well, it seems you were a young man without ambitions or dreams," Mr. Anderson said as he stood up and put on his jacket. "Staying here any longer will just make the food and drink taste worse." "I'm leaving," he announced. "Dad, what are you saying?" Emily tried to stop him, but he ignored her and left the room. "I'm sorry for his rudeness," Emily repeatedly apologized, and I could only respond with a strained smile. Although I worried about the future after that dinner, David later told me that Mr. Anderson usually didn't behave like that. He might have been overly sensitive about the family connections due to his daughter's marriage. Emily also said, "I've never seen my father act like that before. It probably wouldn't be an issue if I wasn't around." David and Emily's relationship remained strong. The wedding plans proceeded smoothly, and the date was set without any major issues. Finally, David and Emily's wedding day arrived. Surrounded by many well-wishers, they pledged their eternal love. the touching scene brought tears to my eyes. While I was still emotional during the reception, the microphone was handed to Mr. Anderson. After Emily read her message to her parents, Mr. Anderson stood up with a stern expression. "I am very happy that my beloved daughter is marrying such a reliable man as David," he began, but his expression remained somber. As I wondered why, the topic suddenly shifted to me. "Everyone will find out eventually, so I'll let you know now. It's about David's brother. He didn't go to high school." Mr. Anderson's sudden announcement changed the atmosphere in the room. People started glancing at me, and their stares felt piercing. "You must be worried about having such a family as relatives." "I feel the same. A junior high school graduate is a disgrace to the family." His words echoed in my head through the microphone. I'd been teased about my education before, but never humiliated in front of so many people. Moreover, this time it was rejection from someone who was about to become family. This rejection hurt more than any other prejudice I've faced because of my education. I wanted to leave this venue as soon as possible and hide somewhere out of sight. However, it wouldn't be acceptable for a close relative of the groom to leave halfway through the reception. As I looked down, there was some commotion at the front. When I looked up, I saw David standing up and taking the microphone from Mr. Anderson. "I understand how you feel, Mr. Anderson," David said, slowly scanning the entire room. "To me, even though he didn't go to high school, Mike is a great and respected brother. He is involved in both the local tourism development project and the renewable energy power plant project, is a star in this town." Beside David, I could hear Mr. Anderson mutter, "Mike Johnson." Since there were people from the construction industry in the town hall in the room, I could hear whispers, "So he's Mike Johnson's brother." Mr. Anderson must have reviewed the documents about the projects planned in the town, including the involved companies and key figures. His face suddenly turned pale, and he began to tremble. As David said, "I have been selected as a member of two major projects being considered in this town. The issues of population decline, economic stagnation, and energy problems in the town are urgent. And it's clear that our hometown could face a future of mergers and absorption if nothing changes. To protect our hometown, we need to implement some radical reforms. While we aren't neglecting childcare policies, they alone won't necessarily succeed. Moreover, it will take a long time for children to grow up, work, and contribute taxes. By that time, the town might not be functioning, and those children could leave for the cities in search of jobs. That's why, along with promoting childcare, we are focusing on the economic development of our town. The central pillars of this project are attracting tourists and developing infrastructure using renewable energy. If we can create attractive tourist spots, visitors from outside the county will spend money and stimulate the economy. And they might even consider moving here. The power plant project is still being refined, but if we succeed in generating renewable energy using local resources, it could alleviate the rising energy costs for the townspeople and create jobs, invigorating the town. Utilizing the underused land makes this a feasible plan. We are meticulously planning these projects with local companies and lawmakers, using state subsidies. Mr. Anderson must have been aware of these plans but probably didn't realize that the man he insulted as a junior high school graduate was the same person involved in these projects. Although I haven't achieved anything significant yet, the success of these projects depends on the collaboration between the government and businesses. Mr. Anderson's words and actions threaten the very foundation of this effort. Perhaps realizing this, Mr. Anderson appeared absent-minded throughout the reception. As soon as the reception ended, he came straight to me, forgetting to greet the guests. "Mike, you're an impressive man. I hope you continue to contribute to development of our town," Mr. Anderson said with a completely changed his attitude. While I was puzzled, Emily interjected, "Dad, please save this conversation for after seeing off the guests. And you have something else to say first, don't you?" Emily's voice carried a hint of anger, and Mr. Anderson fell silent. After the greetings and thanking the venue staff, he approached me again. "Mike, I have a proposal, given your talents. We need to trim the budget for the upcoming project." "I was hoping you could help with that," he said. I realized that he was trying to involve me in the town's financial matters. Although I couldn't make such decisions on my own, cutting investments now would hinder the town's development. Everyone is working hard to rebuild the struggling town. Frankly, it's problematic for someone in his position to have such a self-serving attitude. With all due respect, let's discuss this in the proper setting. We don't want things to get complicated, I replied, trying to end the conversation. But he didn't back down. But with the election coming up and political issues at play, I need to maintain a good fiscal status while leaving a legacy for the next election. He insisted. His selfish reasoning left me speechless. As I pondered what to do, Emily came running over. I heard everything. It's rude to suddenly change your stance and try to negotiate. You should apologize for your previous behavior first. She scolded him like a teacher reprimanding a student. Prompted by Emily saying, "Come on." He turned to face me. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "That's too quiet and not enough. You owe him a proper apology." It truly felt like a teacher-student scenario. Looking around and seeing no one else witnessing this, I sighed in relief. If someone saw this, it would ruin his dignity as a mayor. It's okay. I don't mind about it, and besides, I haven't accomplished anything yet. Let's work hard together from now on, I said. Hearing this, Mr. Anderson looked relieved. Although Emily still seemed unsatisfied, she probably decided there was no need to say more since I was okay with it. She apologized deeply to me before leaving. A few days after the wedding, I found myself sitting across from Mr. Anderson at the same restaurant. "Thank you for meeting with me today. I wanted to formally apologize for my previous rudeness. Please forgive me," he said. It seemed Emily had insisted he apologize properly, and he was now earnestly doing so. When he had asked to meet, I had assured him it was okay and not to worry. But he had been adamant about apologizing in person. Accepting his insistence, I agreed to this meeting, and it was clear that his sole purpose was to apologize sincerely, with no mention of budget concerns. Thinking about moving forward as colleagues without the baggage of my educational background lifted a weight off my shoulders. Several months passed. The project plans were progressing steadily, but CEO, Mr. Adams, began frequently summoning me to check on our progress. While he wasn't trying to pressure me, this project would significantly impact not only the town's future but also our company's performance and future operations. It was crucial to avoid the project being reassigned to another company or scaled down. Understanding his concerns, I often felt the pressure bearing down on me. However, there was no choice but to press on. Today, we were in the final stages of finalizing the project plan, with an important meeting ahead. I headed to the meeting venue adopting more serious attitude. The meeting initially seemed to go smoothly, but we soon faced a significant problem. The first step in the town's development required clearing the land, but the landowner refused to sell. Despite offering a generous purchase price and explaining the project's importance for the town's future, the owner remained adamant, saying, "I won't sell the land, no matter what you say." The meeting fell into a heavy silence at the unexpected setback. One of the attending council members raised his hand and addressed the room. "Shouldn't we just give up?" This was unrealistic from the start. Longtime residents don't want new tourist attractions or energy facilities, he said. His words deepened the room's heavy atmosphere, and the tension became palpable. The executives from other companies in attendance looked visibly displeased. However, with the land issue, they couldn't argue back. The council member, who had always been skeptical about the project, seemed keen to return to the drawing board. If the issue couldn't be resolved, reverting the project was inevitable, but it was crucial for our town's future, beyond corporate profits. Mr. Anderson broke the silence. "I'll go talk to them. It might not be resolved immediately, but we need to take time to discuss it. This project is essential for our town's future," he said. While the corporate representatives looked relieved, the council member who spoke earlier reacted with displeasure. "What's going on? You used to agree with me, Mr. Anderson. Have you been bribed to change your mind?" Such an allegation was outrageous. Mr. Anderson remained calm and refuted him. "I don't change my stance lightly, but I will if it's for the town's benefit. We need to come together and embrace new initiatives for our future." The council member fell silent, unable to counter Mr. Anderson's passionate words. Although the issue remained unresolved, we reaffirmed our commitment to the town's transformation and moved to finalize the plans. Despite Mr. Anderson's efforts, I heard that the land issue still hadn't been resolved. At this rate, the project could be significantly delayed or even cancelled. When my concerns growing more and more, Mr. Adams called me in. Had the project fallen through? Although I had such concerns, when I heard from Mr. Adams that the project start date has been set, I was overjoyed. Mr. Anderson's persistent persuasion had finally swayed the landowner and he agreed to let the town manage the land. Despite numerous struggles, our efforts were about to bear fruit. The real challenge lies ahead. Let's build a town we can be proud of. With this renewed determination, I prepared to move forward. 3 years later, the town's development was well underway. The completion is still a ways off, but the project is starting to take shape, and I'm looking forward to the future. One busy workday, I received wonderful news from David. David's first son had been born. When I arrived at David's house with a gift, I saw Mr. Anderson gently holding the baby. "Dad, let Mike hold him too," Emily said. "All right, but wait a little while longer," he replied. Seeing him lovingly playing with his grandson made me smile. The house was filled with toys and baby essentials, most of which Mr. Anderson had bought. For this child's sake, we need to make this town lively. Mr. Anderson murmured to no one in particular. Generations will change, but this town will endure. To ensure these children can live fulfilling lives, I decided to continue contributing to our hometown alongside Mr. Anderson.